All right, so today we're going to be talking about homestead financing, not to be confused with home financing, and we'll get into that a little bit more as we go. So homestead financing, and this is from kind of my perspective. Somebody asked me what it means to me, and this is what I came up with. But homestead finances is about understanding the costs and gains while you take the steps to become more self-sufficient, not completely self-sufficient, where you call home. The intent of this training is to help identify really where you can start. It's to know where you can make good investments and how to identify what works for you and your family. Sorry, I got the sniffles a bit here. So this can be exciting, but most of the time at starting point, it's somewhat intimidating. So but at the end of the day, if you look around you, you got a family by your side that wants to do it with you. So that's cool. All right, so first steps, going back to what I said before, difference between homestead financing and home finances. So my statement is make sure your house is in order. So this is where we talk about home finances as opposed to homestead finances. This simply means that you need to understand your home finances first. Though this may not be helpful to start, it's extremely important to understand your home finances and how it ties to your homestead finances. So some recommendations, this is what me and my wife do. So we review weekly. This is really important. It's something that doesn't really take long. You just sit down, you go through, okay, what's coming out, what's going in, and how much money you have to invest or put into savings. The next point is having a plan to work down debt. So there's a lot of great resources out there. One that me and my wife align with is Dave Ramsey's work. He's got he's got some great content there. One sec, sorry. Another thing we do is we want to figure out what our dreams are and create tangible timelines for those dreams. So this will give you essentially something to drive towards, and it'll give you that drive to be successful in it. So I'll get to that point on the next one, which is I recommend that you have a daily touch point. So what worked really well for me and my wife is we would sit down, have a coffee, debrief the day, just the two of us, and then we'd start talking about, again, what are our dreams, what are the things that we want to work on, and essentially what you're doing is you're speaking life into your actions. So one example for myself was when we first got married, I wanted to finish my apprenticeship. I wanted to get to a management role because that's where I felt like I was going to be really good, and I wanted acreage. Those are the three key things, and I said I wanted them before I was the age of 30. Well, because I had that goal and because it was tangible, I finished my apprenticeship, I exceeded management expectations, and by 27 we had acreage. So it was creating a tangible timeline where you're like, okay, this is what I really want. So, and then doing research on projects that you want to do so that you can see whether it's worth it or not. Sometimes you'll go through a project and go, okay, I really want to do this, and then you start doing it and realize, no, I don't want to do this. This is not the route I want to go. So, so we'll move on to some examples into the home finance, or in the homestead finances. So I took 4 examples. The first one I'm going to go through is chickens for eggs. So when you're looking at investing in chickens, specifically for eggs, the breed does matter. It's what do you want? Do you want a specific size egg? Do you like them all the same color? How do they do in this weather? Like Canada is cold, so getting the right size or the right type of chicken is important. And all of those come down to a bit of personal preference. So what you'll see below is what we chose to do and how it kind of pans out. So we do like an Easter egg variety, so you can see there's 4 there: Americana, Sex Link, Barred Rock, and Isa Brown. The egg sizes you get for those are medium large, which is what we prefer. When you start looking at your costing, so feed can be between 18 and 20. It can probably be over 20 now, but that's what you can kind of bank on. And we did 25 birds. 1 bag of feed would last 1 week for 25 birds, approximately. So the initial investment for the birds, when you look at it now, it's about $3 a chick, unless you know somebody, and you can get it for less or nothing. A coop, if you look at a basic coop, you're probably looking around $1,000 in material. So when you look at the cost, just to get them to the point of laying the eggs, you're probably 8 bags into your grower and your starter, and that's when they start getting into their into the layer. So you add that up with your waters and your feeders, you're probably sitting around $1,500 just for that investment. This is where it gets more interesting, understanding the value of what you're selling, or if you're going to sell it, that is. The value of what you're selling. So I took an example of, those 25 birds. I said 2 dozen a day. It's probably not going to be quite that extent because 25 birds won't give you 2 dozen a day, but ballpark it. At $6 a dozen, you're at a day 160, you're breaking even. But if you sell it for $7 a dozen, you're a whole month earlier, and that's taking into consideration all the costs. So it just goes to show you the importance of understanding what you're selling and the value of it. So at 1 full year, when you're looking at getting new layers, you're up, $1,900 if you're selling it at $6 a dozen, and $2,600 if you're selling it for $7 a dozen. So it's important to understand the value of what you have. So another point just to be made, you don't have to buy them as chicks. You can buy them already laying, and you're probably looking at $10 to $15 a bird for that. So you can take that and look at that cost and say, okay, does it make sense based on the price of feed if you're going to do that? So. All right, so chickens for meat birds. Again, from my experience, it's not as critical, the breed itself. There is a bunch of breeds out there, but from what we've done it a number of times with a couple different breeds. They've all been successful. So this is an example of one of the times we did it, just to give you a perspective of the overall cost and the outcome. So I think it was the springtime, and we got 30 birds. We did buy it from Oxford Feed in this scenario at $2.45 a bird. That gets you to $85.50, including tax. You're looking at 8 weeks of grower. And what that does is you got an 8-week period of time that you're growing your birds. You don't want to go much past that, because then you might have health issues with them because they grow fast. This is taking into consideration they also do eat grass. Like we, in our case, have a chicken tractor that we rotate through. They eat the grass, and it cuts down on your cost for feed. So that overall cost being at $147.50, if you're going to sell your birds, you do have to get them butchered by somebody certified. You can't legally do it yourself at home and sell it. I'll just leave it at that. So that overall cost, you're looking at $105, considering $350 a bird to butcher. And the finish weight, in our example, most cases, it's around 5 pounds per bird. So with that initial investment of $338, not taking into consideration a chicken tractor, because there's a lot of different ways that you can do it for potentially less than that, you're looking at making $262 for that turn of birds. So from my perspective, and this is where your preference comes in, meat birds is not as lucrative as doing eggs. And this is something that, we do. We look at what are the pros and cons of what we're going to do and where it'll benefit. However, we do meat birds ourselves for ourselves. You get rid of the cost of having to get it butchered and whatnot, and you know what you're feeding your birds. There's definitely a benefit to being able to do that if you can in your area. I realize that some people can't grow birds where they live. So where this becomes lucrative, though, just a note, is when you can buy your birds in bulk and where you can buy your feed in bulk. That's where you can make your setup where it can take a lot of birds and do it that way. That's where people can have success doing this, but this is my recommendation if you have a smaller property where you can just do it for you and your family. So for beef cows, this is my favorite spot. I also recognize not a lot of people can do beef cows where they live. They take up probably about an acre per head, so unless you have acreage, it's not very likely to happen. But it's a great an example of feasibility for cost. So when I looked at cattle, I looked at what's the yield? How big is it going to get in what time frame? What is the type of meat when it's done? And what kind of housing are you capable of putting together for that cow or the cows when you have them? So this is an example of what I do. I do Angus. It's actually Angus cross with Holstein. The reason I do it is because at 18 months, they're probably around 1,400 pounds when they're done, which is the size I want. The meat itself is awesome. The marbling is beautiful. And I have the setup in such a way where I can have them. They do quite well in the winter. Not as good as something like a belted Galloway, but if you have the right housing for it, it works quite well. So yeah, that's, if you're starting with a cow like that, this is my example. I can buy a calf like that for about $400. You do two. Every animal really needs a companion. So I do two. Any animal I have has a companion. It's just better for them. So starting off as a calf, obviously you need to do milk replacer of some sort. You're looking at $100 a bag, so 2 cows, $400. I personally like grass-fed beef. Constantly feeding it hay, it's not, to me, as nice. So we have the acreage. We can rotate our cows, and the majority of their food is grass. We supplement with grain and stuff, where I'm looking at around 2 cups grain, 2 cups whole oats. That's up to about 500 pounds. You double it up to 800 pounds, and then double it again from 800 pounds to finish. I go through around 6 large round hay bales per cow. So that's a round hay bale is around 1,000 to 1,200 pounds. So that you have to have a place to store it and keep it dry. So taking things like that into consideration. So in total cost just for feed a year for 2 cows is $1,600. Or sorry, not 1 year, 18 months, the full cycle for the cow itself. Butcher cost is about $1,000. That depends on where you go and what you're getting. In this example, we sent it to Norpac, and they vacuum seal each individual piece. You can see what it is. It stays a lot longer, so again, it's an investment. And so the upfront cost, by the time you calculate the fencing, the feeders, the electric fence, all that kind of stuff, $3,500 to $5,000 is not shocking at all. So that overall cost being $7,500 to $9,000, you're not going to make your money back in 1 year. So this is just to show, okay, there's an upfront cost that's pretty significant, and it takes a little while to get that money back. The nice thing about it, though, is once you have that initial setup cost, it's year over year. It's the cattle, like that feed and all that stuff, is less than your initial setup. So the downside is the risk. Losing a cow, $400 for a cow, $200 for milk if they get bloat or something like that. It is a risk that you take up front, so you have to have an appetite for that. All right. So moving on to canning. So canning, this is something my wife loves to do. I am not a canner, I'm not going to lie, but she does very, very well. I think you did a class last time, and I believe that there's probably going to be more coming up on that as well. So this was just an example, taking into consideration a family of 4. Again, upfront cost is high, but it's well worth it. So the gains, far outweighing the initial cost, because you get to control what goes in those jars. You can purchase whatever stuff from the market that you want at certain times where the cost is lower. It's just, aside from the initial investment on the jars itself, it does make sense. So you'll see a breakdown of what you would need for a family of 4. That's 876 jars. Then you get into the supplies itself. So you have your Bernardin lids and seals. We have a note there. You can buy them from PV Mart, Canadian Tire, and stuff like that. That's where all this costing comes from. But in a case like this, just a fun fact, you can go to $M and get your lids, Bernardin, quality lids, for half the price. So take it as you may. Enamel-coated carbon steel canner, or not canners, canning pot. Your Bernardin lid kit, that being your funnel, your jar lifter, and your headspace tool. And then in this case, a Presto pressure canner. This is obviously one of the more expensive pieces, but when you look at canning things that are low acid, you're going to need something like that anyways. So your initial investment at $1,391.50 for year 1. But this is where the cool part is, year 2 and going forward, your investment's going to be $370 to $185 year after that. So you can see a definite gain in doing so. Actually, on that last one, just another note. It's amazing how many people have jars, have canning equipment that if you ask around, it's guaranteed it's out there. So that's all new costing. You can save quite a bit if you ask around. So keeping a financial log and measuring your success. This is one area that I'd bet everybody forgets. It's like labeling your plants when you put the seed in, right? It's either you don't think of it or you don't want to do it because you're afraid of what the outcome is. So to me, the only way to know if there are things that you need to change for good or for bad is if you keep a log. It's a discipline that you really want to keep. I find the areas of failures, because trust me, they're going to be failures. There's been a lot that I've gone through. The areas of failures are where I find I've learned probably the most. So how many times you can identify what works and doesn't work, you're looking into the next year, making yourself more proficient at what you do. So this was one example that I gave myself. Year 1, specifically cattle, because they take a lot of water. Year 1, I'd carry bucket after bucket after bucket every day. So it got big, but it takes a lot of energy and a lot of time that you don't always have. So what I did was excavated and put in water lines for auto waters, de-icers and stuff like that. It saved me a ton of time and a ton of energy. And the one aspect to remember is your time is a value. And last but not least, this one is extremely important once you think about it. It's understanding that understanding of what God has given you, you need to govern. In order for you to get more, you have to govern what He's already given you. And I think sometimes when you hear that, you think, okay, when I make mistakes, is that not me governing? That's not the case. You can make mistakes. You just need to learn from those mistakes in order for you to govern what you're given. And that's where He's going to bless you with more. So when you put the efforts into growing, preserving, making, harvesting, you want to ensure that you utilize it all. Waste is not waste. We're probably going to get into that more in different trainings in the future, but it's understanding how to use everything that you have. So, I look at these trainings, the cattle, the chickens, the canning. This might not be for you, but the idea behind this is to give you some of those steps and some of that direction on how you make the first steps going forward, and maybe things that you can do to ensure that goes well. So if nothing else, I want to give you guys the confidence to start in those steps. So, and one thing I say often, spending money is not the issue. Spending it wisely is. That's a mindset that you have to have. So, that is it. There was one question that came up. I can't remember if it was through the email chains or whatnot, but the one question that came up was, with food prices on the rise, how can an individual finance effectively if they don't have land or for a big crop? So the first thing that kind of hit me was for a big crop. It's amazing how little space you need to grow a substantial amount of food. If you look at tomato plants, pepper plants, zucchini, beans, it's amazing how much fruit that you yield from that. And then you get the ability to preserve them and can them and stuff. You don't have to have a lot to start, is I think what the part of the answer is. The other thing is, you'd be shocked with how many people in our church family, they're good with people coming and sharing their garden space. It's just a matter of asking, finding those people and being able to partner with them. And then if nothing else, if you don't have the space for crops and stuff like that, you can still go to a local market. You can find things while they're a lower price, and you can start learning, how to can and preserve them, where you'd be shocked with how much money you can save. Another kind of funny thing, you don't need perfect produce to can. Tomatoes being a great example. Imperfect tomatoes dice the same as normal. They sauce the same as normal. You can paste them the same as any other tomato. It doesn't really matter. So, and that is it. Any questions? Finance is pretty boring most of the times, to be honest with you. All right.
So you say animals that you have to pair. Now, do you pair the related ones? Or do you get a male and a female, or?
No, so we've had 2 females, we've had 2 males, we've had a mix of the two. If you have a male, obviously you don't want it to be intact, unless of course you want more animals.
Okay.
But yeah, it doesn't matter. Actually, even different breeds. So for example, we had sheep. When we had sheep, we paired a miniature donkey with the sheep. did just fine. I hate sheep. We got rid of them because they have this desire to die for some reason, whereas cows don't. And so we decided, okay, now we're going to put the donkey with the cow. And they got along great. Well, the downside is the cow's not going to be around for long. So once the cow leaves, then we had the donkey, and it didn't really have anything to companion with. Well, that doesn't work. The donkey needs a companion, so we ended up selling the donkey, as painful as that might have been. But they do need companions.
That donkeys are good for protecting your cattle and your
Yep.
whatever, because of coyotes or whatever. So
They
when-
are, yeah.
when-
That's why we used them for sheep. For a full-grown cow, I'm not worried about coyotes. But for a different example, we have quite a bit of chickens, ducks, and stuff like that. From my experience with chickens and whatnot, we have Muscovy ducks, which I'd call them almost the goose of a duck. They are phenomenal protectors. And I see you're shaking your head. Yes, they are phenomenal protectors because you don't really get raccoons or possums or anything like that because they keep it away. They'll get rid of mice and rats. So they're great. They're great companion animals to chickens and guineas.
Have you looked into the possibility of doing goats? Either alpine goats or milk goats or meat?
I do have milk goats.
There you go.
I should say my wife has milk goats. That's her thing. She's got, what are they called? Nigerian dwarfs. Phenomenal goats, small. Cool thing with goats, people think that, they always want to get out. That's not actually the case. Make it so that it's fun and they got everything inside their pen, they'll stay in. That's just the reality of it. But yeah, and I've made cheese and drink their milk. It's great.
How big is the chicken tractor you have?
So,
Or how many chickens fit inside of
yeah,
it?
no, that's a perfect question. So the chicken tractor I have, I actually took a carport, took the bottom legs off, and put a front and back on it, used the same top, and then put chicken wire on the side. That way you have air flow through, which is needed for a chicken. It's still light enough to be able to move it with two people. It's about 10 feet by 25 feet. And that seemed to be perfect for the 30 birds. So you can fit 50 in it too, yes. Yes, that is true. All right. Yeah, I was going to say, and one thing to note, we are going to be trying, I know Stefan's not here, but we are going to be trying to answer other questions about the other trainings as well.
Two questions. One for the chickens in the tractor. Are they meat chickens or egg chickens?
Meat.
Meat. Do you find that they're healthier and stronger if they are in a tractor versus just in a stationary?
I do. Ours eats the grass as you move it. So I find, and again, we haven't done it, I don't think we've done it the other way, where they were stationary, but I find that chickens in general, they do like eating grass, they do like eating other things aside from feed. It's cheaper for you because it's free food. And it is better for them, I think, to move around from my experience.
How often do you move them?
Daily.
Daily?
Otherwise they kill your grass.
Okay. Second question about the goats.
Yeah.
How much space do they need? Like for two goats, how much space do you need?
Oh, that's a great question. They have way more space than they need right now. So if,
Lots of space. Unless
Yeah.
you want them to try and get out.
well, I mean, the other thing with goats are normally they're not heavy grass eaters. They do like eating weeds and stuff like that. So if you have weeds and you pluck them and give them to the goats, they prefer it over what cows and stuff like that would. So I don't know, if I had a guess, well, you're going to have more than one goat anyways. We got three goats we have in, I'd say, an eighth of an acre right now. And they have more than enough room and food to do well for them. So,
Anybody else have questions for Isaiah?
So a lot of my property is marshy. How does that, is that something that chickens tolerate, or, I don't know?
they do need an area to dust. The problem I find with marshy areas for chickens would be that they can get chicken mites, I think, a little easier, especially in the warm time of the year. So if you're going to have them in a marshy area, as long as they have a place where they can go and dust off, they'll roost if they want to. They're not going to sit in the water. I think they're relatively smart that way. But I think it would be fine, like I said, just have a place for them to dust.
Just adding to what Nathan asked, if you put your Muscovy ducks in with your chickens, they'll sift through that marshy area and get rid of the parasites and all that lovely stuff. But they also work as a protector for them.
Exactly.
So as long as there is one little section where they have a dry area, they can actually do quite well there.
Yeah. Yeah. And guineas are fantastic for parasites and stuff like that as well. They are so loud. Yeah. Yeah.
And Muscovies are quiet.
That's another, we had Toulouse and Chinese geese before, and great protectors, but they talk too much. Yeah, yeah. So
I love how none of your questions had to do with finances.
I know. I figured that would happen because there's not really a ton of questions. I will say this, for anybody that actually does have questions about finances or wants to look at that and maybe how to start, approach me anytime. I have no problem doing that. I'm the geek with an Excel spreadsheet on the background looking at, okay, how is this all going to pan out, and kind of playing with it as it goes. So by all means, if you have questions later, feel free to hit me up.
So I had friends that bought unpasteurized milk, and they got their provider got in trouble for selling it, and now they can't buy it. How would they avoid that? Like, I've heard that if you give a gift rather than sell, would that?
You can go goat's milk, you just can't do cow's milk.
Yeah, so I will say this.
Get rid of your cows and get goats.
To be honest, absolutely. So the Nigerian dwarf goats, the milk tastes awesome. The fat
It's usually
content,
better for you.
it is. The fat content's nice and high. What is it, 10%, 8, 10, somewhere in there?
And they don't eat as much.
Yeah, between 7 and 14, depending on your.
Okay, so I was pretty close.
Go.
So, and yeah, it makes great cheese, by the way. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to come up with you. You guys can keep asking questions.
absolutely.
Because now I'm going to say ask questions for
Anybody.
anything from today, and we'll try and answer. Stefan's not here anymore, so we're going to do our best to answer questions you might have for his stuff. We'll make up answers.
Okay. I have another question about the chickens. How much, because you're moving them every day, so how much land are they on? Would be enough for one of those tractors?
So in my area, in that chicken tractor, I can probably move it 12 times in an area. And by the time I get back to the beginning, it's clean enough where the grasses come back up again. Well, I mean, nitrogen is good for it, right? But making sure you don't have clumps, so you spray it down. And I find that works out quite well. So if you have half the chickens or half the area, you can kind of section off. I'll say it this way. With my cows, I actually do the same idea, where I rotate paddocks where the grass has time to come back up. The ducks are great for going through and making sure everything is spread out, if you know what I mean. And you can kind of rotate back and forth.
And the goats eat everything the cows don't.
That's correct.
Just a side note on chickens is next month we're doing everything chickens. So we're talking about chickens, meat birds, incubating, all that jazz. Yeah, we'll cover lots of stuff on chickens next month, but we can still answer some stuff.
Well, I guess about the beef, you said that it's about an acre per head?
Yeah, yeah. I supplement some with grain and oats, but you're looking at about an acre a head.
And grain is the better way to do it, or just because, like, can you go strictly grass-fed or
You
not?
can. I think some breeds are better, going back to the belted Galloway. When you look at a belted Galloway butchered, there's not a lot of marbling, there's not a lot there. It's a very deep red meat, but they're great foragers. They do really, really well in the winter. Like they'll dig up and eat grass, even if there's snow, it doesn't matter. But they do much better for that.
And is that strict pasture, or do you try to like fence off in like a bush area or something like that, or?
No, that's straight pasture that I have. I've considered bush. I don't know what the gains are on that, but yeah, I've never done that before.
Also, they eat all of our extras. So in the fall, when you're pulling everything out of your garden, you want to know that they can eat what you're giving them.
Yeah.
And then Halloween, we collect pumpkins and they
Yeah.
because they go to the butcher in December. So from like all of
October,
November and
November,
December, they get a pumpkin or two a day. So there's lots of extra stuff you can feed them too.
And we do, like if we're cutting down a tree, any of the limbs where it's got, like maple, for example, they love when you put a maple piece in with all the leaves on it, they'll clean that up in no time, so.
And one more. Do you have them access to the whole pasture, or do you try to like cordon them off and move them in different
Yeah,
ways?
I partition it so I can rotate them, yeah.
So 1 acre divided by 4, whatever?
4 is ideal. Right now, I have it divided by 2. So it does work for me, but if I find that I need to change it, I'll put another gate in the back and just have it so that they rotate around.
So my question is about the goat milk or the goats you have. Now, each individual might have different taste buds based on goat milk. I particularly don't like goat milk, but is the variety you have, is it kind of like the goat taste milk, or is it kind of a lot different, you were saying?
No,
It's a really
it
good-
is- It is, oh, you so want to answer this.
Answer for this.
Okay, go ahead.
So my daughter also raises dwarf Nigerians, but she does not keep a buck because the male makes the milk taste funny.
Yeah, it tastes like barn.
Yeah, and that's because of the male. So she ships her does out to be bred, brings them back, and it's hard to tell the difference between the cheese she makes and the cheese you buy at the store
Yeah,
or
'cause
the
it
milk.
tastes like barn.
Yeah, and they don't, hers doesn't.
Yep.
Perfect. So you don't have males?
No.
particularly?
I bring in a male.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't ship my does out. I bring in, I actually dry my girls up before I breed them.
Okay, yeah.
Because nobody wants to drink their milk
Yeah.
once he's there. So, but my family all drinks this milk. They have all told me it's good. I'm lactose intolerant. I don't do milk.
Okay.
But I could drink it if I wanted to, which is one of the reasons we got it, is because 3 of us have dairy allergies. Everyone seems to tolerate it well, and it is delicious. As far as I know, it is illegal to sell goat milk. I know it's definitely illegal. You can't even give away cow milk, raw cow milk. So I don't know. I'm fairly sure I'm not even allowed to give my raw milk away. If you come to my house and drink it, that's one thing. But there's
Do you,
workarounds.
do you kid out your goats? Or
We're doing that now.
Yeah, they're all due next month.
what do you do with them? Do you keep them for the next, or do you sell them off?
I'll probably keep a couple does and I'll sell off all my bucks.
Oh, okay.
Unless we have too many and then we have to sell some does as well.
Yeah, we'll see. They're so cute. It's all recorded. I know. They're due a week after next month's training, so maybe the month after that we'll bring somebody in. So next month is chickens anyways.
Yep.
So was there any other chickens?
Any other questions? Yeah.
Got my head in there. Any other questions about even growing?
Yes. So this Pro Mix starter from the first session.
Yes.
Do they have different nutrient balance versions of them?
You can get the different soils. This one's an organic mix, so it does actually have some nutrients in it. But your soil mix is designed to be really light and fluffy and to hold moisture for your seedlings. So another reason we pot up into a heavier, denser soil is because there's not a lot of nutrients in that. So you're going to get a nice seedling to come up, and then you will eventually need to transplant it so that it has more nutrients. But when you do your seedlings, it doesn't need a lot. It has what it needs to get started.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Somebody asked me to come up and ask questions about spinach.
Yes, you were asking me about doing the winter sowing and what you can do in the jugs or however you choose to do your winter sowing. And you had asked about spinach. And in my experience, opinion, as soon as the ground is workable, like as soon as you can rake it up and put seeds in, you don't even need to do that in a container or anything. You can just do that right into your garden. They're very, very cold hardy, and they will start coming up as soon as the weather starts warming up. If you're worried about it, you can put like a row cover over top of it to keep them from freezing. But generally, spinach is the first thing up. They actually don't like heat. So if you are planting your spinach the same time you're planting everything else, and then wondering why you're not getting spinach, it's because it's too hot. It'll just bolt, and you'll get next to nothing. You really want to plant it really early in the spring, or you want to wait to the fall, and after your big heat is done, then plant it, and then it'll go until it freezes hard, essentially.
And when you say bolt, you mean?
Oh, bolt. It means it's going to stop putting. It's going to stop putting the energy into the leaves, and it's going to put a stalk straight forward, and it's going to flower and seed.
Yep.
So. And then you save those seeds? Yeah, you can save the seeds. Yeah, broccoli does it too. So. Yeah, well, radishes are really fast. It's like 21 days from when you plant them to when you can pick them. They're really, really fast. So if you don't pick them, they're gonna just put down a taproot and bolt. So there's a window there. Those really fast growing plants, which is nice if you're doing like companion planting or succession planting, throwing radishes in because they're so fast.
You can eat the radish seed pods too, they taste pretty good.
Oh, I've never eaten a radish seed pod.
It tastes like a spicy pea or something.
Interesting.
This might be a really dumb question, but I'm intrigued by the goat's milk that doesn't taste goaty. So, does anyone know if you can have a goat in town, so to speak? If you call it dog.
You might want to look at your bylaws. You definitely need to have two. A goat will not do well by itself, and they can be really loud. No, I suggest two females. If you get a male in town, you will have to move or get rid of your goats. Your neighbors will complain, I promise.
You will complain.
We live in the middle of nowhere, and we had a male for 2 months, and you could come into my driveway and you knew we had a male. So don't do that in town. But the other thing that you can look at doing, even all the stuff that Isaiah talked about too, is like farm sharing. Having an animal at another farm. You go in and you help with it, you help cover costs, and that's your animal. So if you choose to milk and consume milk from your animal, that's yours. It doesn't have to be on your farm. The same goes for doing things like chickens. If you can't do chickens or meat birds or something, just partner with somebody who can. Really, it is no more effort for us to feed 30 birds than it is for us to feed 60 birds. We're still going out and changing the water and bringing out food. So, and then the only catch is that you have to come out and help butcher them. Or you can pay for someone to do that for cheap.
The farm sharing, you're going to want to leave a paper trail because some of the dairy farmers have been nailed. They sell the cow, but it stays at their place, and if they don't have the records and it isn't proven that that person is paying board on that cow, then they can get in trouble. So
That's
keeping
good.
keeping a paper trail.
That's more so, cow or goat. That really comes down to if you're consuming their milk. You want to make sure you're covering your butt a little bit there. I want to be cautious of how I say that because I know this is going online.
Yep.
Raw milk means glutathione. What is the cost of having, like, let's say 2?
2 goats?
Yeah, and how long can they be milked?
That's a really great question. I'm not going to lie. Isaiah keeps the costs of everything. I have purposely not kept the cost of my goats because I wanted goats. These are my goats. So that being said, they mainly eat hay.
Very low, actually.
Yeah, there's the upfront cost is the actual goat itself. 90% of their diet is hay. They eat very little grain. They're not supposed to eat grain. Sunflower seeds.
Sunflower seeds for selenium.
Yeah, so they do have some things that they eat. I buy kelp and minerals.
Trace minerals.
But honestly, they consume so little. It's not a huge, probably a bit of an upfront cost. And then fencing.
Yeah.
Like, if you want an animal like that, you need to have good fencing.
And how long can they be milked for?
How long can they be milked for? It's going to depend on your goat. It's going to depend how old they are. And the amount will slowly diminish after a while. But you could probably milk for like good 5-6 months. And then you can breed them again. And then they'll have a period of not having milk. And then they're in milk again.
So 5-6 months, how much yield do you get a day?
Again, it's going to depend on your animal. You guys have to know, like, these guys are like this big. They're tiny. So I can, at peak milking, I can probably get a liter, so half a liter in the morning, half a liter at night. Not only they're not just an investment, it's a huge time investment. If you're going to do this, you have to milk them every 12 hours. It's not an option, and there's a very small gray area, like half hour before, half hour after. You actually have to do that, otherwise you can hurt them. Okay. So, yeah, but about a liter a day per doe, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that ends up being, I still have frozen milk in my freezer.
It's a lot of milk.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you can milk by hand for sure. Bigger goats are way easier. My goats, I don't know what words I'm allowed to use. My goats have tiny teats. So I have like a little milker that I hook up to them. Yeah. It's just a little easier on everybody.
It's a little pump.
Because yeah, like they're like that big. So to get your hands, you want to breed them out for longer teats.
I definitely can't do it.
No, you can't at all.
No.
So, any other questions, or are we feeling good for the day? You got to do it into the microphone.
I don't want to go on the mic.
Is this the cycle that you breed them and they stop milking, but you use
You got to do it right into the mic.
Is this the cycle that you breed them and then you use them for meat when they are stopped milking?
Yes. So the goats we don't use for meat because the type of goat, it's really not good for meat. It would not be cost effective.
And I don't want to eat them.
And she doesn't want to eat them. But that is the cycle. It's breed, wean off, and then you get a yield of milk 4 to 6 months after, and depending on the type of goat and how well they milk and stuff like that, and how well you stay on top of it.
You could probably milk them up to a year. Like if you keep up on it and it's a healthy goat, you can get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
Just another plant question. What method do you find is best for to keep birds away from your berries? Especially like strawberries, like low-bearing fruit.
Row covers are probably your best bet.
That's what we did. So for grapes, we did row covers, which is basically a very thin nylon mesh over top to stop and you only need it there during the berry time, right? Mm-hmm. So it depends on the type of bush too, I guess. Yeah,
strawberries are a little bit harder because you do want your pollinators.
Yeah.
But it's yeah, you probably want a row cover. We have guinea fowl. That's the bird. And they like to get up at 5 a.m. They eat all my strawberries, only the ripe red ones.
Oh, yeah.
They will leave them the day before. I think, oh, tomorrow this is going to be awesome. Nope, 6 a.m., they're gone. So yeah, we had to do row covers.
I heard and tried a trick for strawberries. You take some rocks, you paint them so they look like strawberries, put them around your strawberries, the birds peck at the rocks, and they think all your strawberries are rocks.
Interesting. Guineas are notoriously dumb. I bet you that would work for them.
Or they'll eat a rock.
Or they'll eat a rock. That's true. Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
Is everyone feeling good? Any other questions? Otherwise, we will wrap things up for today. We have, thanks. Yeah, next month, like I said, we are planning on doing everything chickens. Not everybody can or wants to do chickens, but we figured we would just do it all at one time because now-ish is the time of year when you're going to start ordering your meat birds. So we figured we would cover as much of that as we can. I have no idea who's presenting. Jaden's doing incubating.
Yeah, there you
so he's excited about that. So feel free to hang around if you guys want, ask any questions. If you're willing to help us wheel some tables back and set up chairs, that's amazing. And there is, if you haven't signed up and would like to sign up for the Seedling Exchange, that's at the connection booth at the back. Did I cover everything? And there's free will offering boxes back there if you want. Otherwise, I think we're good to go. And I'm going to get Isaiah to just close in prayer for us.
Absolutely. All right, Father, I just thank you so much for today. Thank you for, such a great community that we get together and have this desire to learn and grow with each other. I pray that you be with us as we go about our day, keep us safe, and I pray that, these nuggets of information can be helpful and can grow in everything they do. I just thank you for, the beautiful weather we're going to get to enjoy for the rest of the day, and I pray everybody have a safe weekend. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.